Sometimes video games really cause a stir, and a lot of the times when they do, they don't sell well. Sometimes, though, some video games that are extremely contentious also end up being hits. Hi folks, it's Falcon, and today on gameranx, 10 of the most controversial games that sold well. Starting off at number 10, it's Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. Now, I don't know about you, but when I think about controversy, I don't really think of Pokemon. That being said, Scarlet and Violet had every reason to be controversial releases. Why? Because Pokemon Scarlet and Violet was released with an unexcusable number of bugs, and the performance was also awful. It's not good now. To their credit, they've fixed a lot of bugs and eliminated a lot of unnecessary jank in patching the game, but it still doesn't run great. Not a whole lot of video games get the Washington Post, a mainstream paper of good repute, I believe the second largest newspaper in the United States, to point out that it has historically bad graphics. Historically. We talked about it in another video, but there are a number of other games on the Switch that are much more graphically intensive than Pokemon Scarlet and Violet that run much better. It's certainly not new hardware, but Pokemon Scarlet and Violet are not games that should be pushing it to its max either. Still, as of earlier this month, Pokemon Scarlet and Violet was on the brink of surpassing Pokemon Sword and Shield sales. Nintendo released their quarterly financial reports on August 2nd, and Pokemon Sword and Shield had sold just under 26 million units. Pokemon Scarlet and Violet is just about to hit 23 million. Now keep in mind, Sword and Shield was released in 2019, and Pokemon Scarlet and Violet was released almost exactly 3 years later, and there's about no chance it's not going to surpass Sword and Shield sales, if it hasn't already. I'm sure when the next quarterly reports come out, we will find that that is the case. So if people wonder exactly why they haven't really thrown a ton of money at fixing it, it's because clearly it hasn't stopped anybody from buying it. Not to say it isn't better, but it could be a lot better at this point. At number 9 is Resident Evil 6. This one's kind of a perfect example of what happens when you just don't know what direction you want to go in. Obviously, Resident Evil 6 is kind of doubling down on the action aspects that came out of Resident Evil 4. And I can't help but say that there's stuff in Resident Evil 6 that's good, but as a package, it just doesn't come together. There's a lot of different stuff. Different characters all do different things, and not really in a way that's balanced out and works, but rather just kind of scattershot. And I never really hated Resident Evil 6 in the way that a lot of other people hated it. But I don't think it's going to top any best Resident Evil games list anytime soon. And that's being kind. When it came out, this was a game that caused a massive, insane battle between people and Capcom. People were so mad, but they couldn't stop buying Resident Evil games. Resident Evil 6 is actually one of the more successful singular Resident Evil releases. Resident Evil 6 is bizarre because it sold incredibly well over 10 million units sold. And also people were asking the question, is this the end of the Resident Evil series? And number 8, Aliens Colonial Marines. A large amount has been said about this game over the years, but I think it can probably most easily be summed up with the fact that the game that they showed off in 2012, claiming to be showing everyone actual gameplay and that this is what they would be playing when they got the game in their hands, was so different from what people actually got in their hands that they were sued. Sega and Gearbox Software were sued for false advertisement. Now, I think it's actually funny where the suit went. Sega was basically like, we handed this game over to Gearbox. We thought that this stuff was going to work out, and it didn't. We're going to pay a settlement. Gearbox, on the other hand, was like, no! And to their credit, they actually eventually got the lawsuit dropped. They also claimed that Sega kind of screwed them over, and Randy Pitchford, owner of Gearbox, claimed to have lost between 10 and 15 million of his own money on Colonial Marines. This was kind of the latest in a ridiculous back and forth between Sega and Gearbox that basically had gone on through the entire development, including what Sega called misconduct, moving people off of Colonial Marines onto Borderlands and Duke Nukem Forever while still collecting money from Sega. I don't know, it was a huge mess. And the game that came out was also a huge mess. In fact, probably the best aspect of it is the INI file error that once you change a typo significantly improves the artificial intelligence. Anyway, to call this game critically panned would be a ridiculous understatement, and yet somehow it managed to sell 1.3 million copies in just a couple of months. In fact, even though the game is terrible, business analysts regarded it as a commercial success, and that it, alongside Sonic and All-Stars Racing Transformed, which was a very well-received game, might I add, those two games were credited as bringing Sega's profit up 54% and turning the company around. At number 7 is Hatred. I don't know if you remember Hatred. It's kind of a somewhat forgettable game, honestly. It's a game that really intentionally tried to be edgy. A game where you are a guy who hates humanity and go on an isometric humanity killing spree, kind of a gothic Postal. And rather than make a great game that sort of is self-aware about what it exactly is, instead they kind of just went for pissing off people who they knew were going to be easy to piss off. And it did, and wow, did it do a good job of getting the name out there. Hatred had an adults-only rating because it is just sort of a blindly angsty, anarchisty, hate everyone, kill everyone game, and that effectively made it impossible for any mainstream retailer to carry the game. And still, it sold pretty well. In fact, when it came out, it was the #1 selling game on Steam in the United States. It was just Streisand effect all the way down, though, because it didn't have staying power. This was a game that I'm sure got a lot of bad reviews out of spite from the crowd it was targeted at making angry, but there really wasn't a lot going on here. Sadly, it was more of a boring game than a controversial one. I mean, it depicted things that probably would have been super controversial in 1990, but I also think culturally everybody kind of was way past that. And I mean, in terms of mechanics, it was just a really basic twin-stick shooter that didn't offer a lot beyond that. At number 6, do you not have phones? Remember the Diablo Immortal presentation where Blizzard fumbled the ball with the best of them? Or, I don't know, maybe the worst of them? Well, Diablo Immortal is a free-to-play game, so obviously we can't give you sales per se. Nobody bought Diablo Immortal, but as a free-to-play game, it of course has a monetization scheme in it, and holy hell. Back in June, mobile analytics platform Data.ai released numbers to show that Diablo Immortal had been downloaded about 22 million times and has earned somewhere in the neighborhood of $525 million. That's over $500 million. In fact, it is among the top 20 titles to have reached 500 million fastest. When you consider just how many mobile games there are, that's crazy. Perhaps crazier is that although the game is not very well liked in the PC market, it is in the mobile market. It's sitting at a 4.6 on Google Play right now, out of 5. At number 5 is Sonic the Hedgehog 2006. I don't know if there is a mainstream AAA game that has gotten as much hate as Sonic the Hedgehog 2006, and rightfully so. It's a terrible game. Just one of the worst things ever dumped out, and proof that just throwing money at something doesn't make anything good. This was one of those games that went through a lot of changes during its development process, and rather than just, make a Sonic the Hedgehog game, I think they kind of aspired to make us all scratch our heads. But they did so all the way to the bank. It took a couple of months, and it sold 870,000 units and got itself into the Xbox 360 Platinum Hits line, and eventually ended up selling 2.6 million copies. It's probably sold more by now. That figure is actually from 2017, although I don't know how much nostalgia purchasing people are doing of that game, but still, that's way too many. If you've ever played that game, it is so much too many. It did not deserve that many sales. You know, I could go into a long rant about what was wrong with this game, but we've done that a lot of times at this point, and maybe we'll do it again. But I think it can all be summed up in a single word. Wink! And number 4 is Grand Theft Auto Trilogy's Definitive Edition. You know what was wrong with this one. Everything. So much. There was so much wrong with these frickin' games. Everything from the rain to physics to whatever you want to call the broken human representations you want to call the character models in this thing. It still sold 10 million copies when it came out. And although for a little while people really avoided the hell out of it, once they started to fix things, sales picked up again, selling millions more. Now, I struggle to say that the GTA Definitive Edition trilogy is really the definitive way to play these games as of right now, but a lot of people are playing them that way. At number 3 is Star Wars Battlefront 2, a game that, well, it's synonymous with loot box controversy, which is essentially saying, hey, they use Star Wars to get kids to gamble with real money. No one was happy about that. 0 people were happy about that. It made everyone mad. Everyone flipped out for months. And although they did fix the game, and it was ultimately pretty good by the time they were done with it, there was a pretty big scar in terms of its reputation. Now, I like both Star Wars Battlefront 1 and 2, but I don't like what Star Wars Battlefront 2 represented at launch. It was eventually balanced out and made into a pretty good game, like I said, but it was emblematic of the over-monetization of games. I mean, this was a full-priced game with tons of microtransactions that weren't guaranteed to give you anything. It was basically a slot machine for $60. At number 2 is No Man's Sky, the classic overpromise, underdeliver story. We made a video back when this came out about why people were so mad about it, and fortunately, almost everything we talked about in that video got addressed over the next year or so. And you know what? No Man's Sky is fantastic now. It really had to fight past a whole lot of mediocrity to get there, but even so, despite or perhaps because of these problems and the fact that they worked on them, this game has sold over 10 million units, and 10 million is a figure from about a year ago. I don't really know what it is now. I have to assume quite a bit more, but it's done well. And good thing too, because when people actually admit that they're wrong and make good on their promises, that should be rewarded. That should be seen as good. I mean, people should just make good on their promises the first time around, but I almost think it might be better for everyone overall if it was just an acceptable standard that you could say, hey, we messed up, we're going to make good on it, and then you actually do make good on it. That'd be great. If that was normal, man, that'd be great. And finally, at number 1, it's not what you would call a repeat of Star Wars Battlefront or No Man's Sky. In fact, it was almost kind of closer to Sonic 2006 in terms of what happened with this game. Not that there was any human-animal love going on, thankfully. Like, it would have been much worse if Cyberpunk did that. I mean, there's dongs in this game. That's not an outcome I want to know what it would be like. This game was a mess, though, in the same way Sonic 2006 was a mess. And considering what Cyberpunk 2077 is, it should never even be possible to compare it to Sonic 2006, but here we are. I mean, there is a laundry list of things that were wrong with Cyberpunk 2077 when it came out, and thankfully, the damn thing got fixed. And you know what? They didn't just fix it. When they're releasing Phantom Liberty, the semi-sequel / expansion pack, they're releasing a patch that upgrades the game to the same gameplay. Like I said with No Man's Sky, what they did with this game is what should be normal for a bad game, where they actually fix it after admitting that they were wrong. This is good too, because they sold over 13 million copies in the first 21 days, and it's continued to sell well since, selling over 20 million copies, and that's, again, not a new figure. That number comes from September 2022, and since Phantom Liberty has been reaching a peak in hype, I'm sure sales of Cyberpunk 2077 have gone up. I've certainly returned to it, and I'm really looking forward to playing the original game with the patch. But this game has done absolutely crazy, bonkers sales numbers. And looking back at how it was at launch and how people were talking about it, that's, wild to think about. And that's all for today. Leave us a comment. Let us know what you think. If you like this video, click like. If you're not subscribed, now's a great time to do so. We upload brand new videos every day of the week. Best way to see them first is, of course, a subscription, so click subscribe. Don't forget to enable notifications. And as always, we thank you very much for watching this video. I'm Falcon. You can follow me on Twitter at Falcon the Hero. We'll see you next time right here on gameranx.